Well, there was a word that really leapt out at me in that Romans passage. It was the word groan. Why don't you all groan for a second? I wish I could hear you all, but you're on mute. Uh, it's nice to know that the Spirit of God groans with us. That's real compassion. Abigail Van Buren once said, "The church is a hospital for sinners, not a museum for saints." Abigail von Buren's parents were Russian Jews who immigrated to the United States. Some of you may remember her as Dear Abby, that famous advice columnist. Her twin sister, by the way, was Ann Landers. That family loved sharing advice. This metaphor of the church as a hospital came to mind this week because the readings feel like a diagnosis, one that is not that comforting. I fear that many today see the church as a boutique where you recover from a hard week, not a place where you go fearing the needle, but also hoping for true health. A hospital is a place that is concerned for your well-being in the long run and hopefully offers a treatment. So don't expect a steam or a manicure today, because Jesus offers us a diagnostic that is difficult to hear, and some medicine that is hard to swallow. There's not a lot of hope in this parable today. Hope comes next week as we delve into another famous parable, but that's next week. This week, we are taking a hard look at ourselves and the mess we are in. If we somehow would rather not focus on the mess we have authored, the mess that is tearing us apart, then I assure you, this parable will never be in our top 10 until we decide to get better, until we seek and trust an honest and expert diagnosis, until we start a regimen of getting into the weeds, as Jesus put it. I'm curious, when was the last time you had a dandelion salad? I still have this memory as a child when my mother set such a salad in front of me and expected me to eat it. I had spent summers pulling up dandelions because they were unwanted weeds that destroyed the beauty of our suburban lawn. I guess I had come to see these yellow flowered plants as the enemy, and now I was expected to eat them? How was it that something I was taught to see as intrusive and invasive and told to destroy became something that was now deemed good for me to consume? If they were that good, why were we not growing them in the garden? What is a weed anyway? One definition describes a weed as a wild plant growing where it is not wanted and in competition with cultivated plants. Webster's defines a weed as a plant that is not valued where it is growing and is usually of vigorous growth. These definitions only invite us deeper into the weeds because, quite frankly, they don't help. The concept of growing where it is not wanted or competing with cultivated plants makes one wonder who gets to decide on a given set of values. Which plants deserve cultivation and protection? Which plants are valued and why? Now here's a blast from the past for many of you old timers. It reminded me of Mary Lou DeLauer, who loved to make flower altar arrangements from the so-called weeds that grew around our property. For one thing, it saved a lot of money, but they were stunningly beautiful when arranged at the altar, and many of us were surprised that they were all considered weeds. The beauty of these weeds were amplified by the act of using them to adorn the altar. All are welcome, even weeds, or those who have been made to feel like weeds or labeled as weeds. All are welcome. You see, it's all a matter of perspective. If we are going to get into the weeds with Jesus today, we have to ask some hard questions. Are human beings weeds on this planet? unwanted creatures destroying the air and the climate, putting themselves and other creatures at risk of extinction? Aren't immigrants now being treated like weeds right now? With our government wanting to uproot them and toss them over the fence or wall, as the case may be? Is not the story of blacks in America one of being forcefully uprooted and shipped to a foreign land and planted in pots of slavery, which kept them from spreading roots or bearing fruit for themselves while they were picked clean of all their dignity and history? And as slaveholders desired more land to produce cotton, the Native Americans had to be uprooted as well to make room for whites, and as they argued, their God-given right to take that land from others, a concept based solely on white supremacy. Have women been treated as weeds, suffocating and scorched under the glass ceilings of hothouses controlled by men? In the eyes of God, would white men be considered weeds, having been the source of so much pain and suffering, promoting the invasive growth of imperialistic thought? Could the church be seen as a weed that has suffocated the indigenous richness of other cultures and traditions, all for the sake of homogenating us into a doctrinal conformity? Let's be clear here. Jesus advises that the weeds not be uprooted because the roots are intertwined. It may not seem so on the surface, but if you dig down into our history, you learn how these connections are profound. There is no problem another has that is not somehow connected to us, and maybe to our action or inaction. The roots of our wealth intertwine with the roots of cotton plants and plantations. The roots of our beginnings as a country are intertwined with white supremacy and slavery. The roots of our comfort grow in the soil of land stolen from Native Americans. I believe that this parable is about discomfort. It has been said that the power of the gospel is that it can both comfort the afflicted and also afflict the comfortable. That is where we are in this reading. We as a nation are called right now to be willing to be uncomfortable. And one thing that should make us feel uncomfortable is that we can choose to be uncomfortable. One of the signs of white privilege is that we can choose the spa over the hospital. We have memberships, neighborhoods, social status that give us the power to choose or not choose to get into the weeds. So this morning, consider me your doctor. Aren't you lucky? Will you survive? Is up to you. I know you want a quick fix, but recovery is going to involve a better diet, more exercise, and any way you look at it, it involves a willingness to embrace discomfort. Will you join me in the discomfort? I have changed my diet recently. I'm consuming all those posts and videos folks are sharing. I'm learning that my history teachers were feeding me lies only because they were taught lies as well. This is discomforting. I feel thrown into the weeds, and I know many of you do as well. In our recent anti-racism forums we had this week, dozens of you shared how discomforting this time is. We have all been shaken out of our comfort zone. But good for us for being open to feeling uncomfortable. Good for us when we are reading things we never thought we would read, listening to lectures that are changing our perspective, and talking to one another about our deeper stories, stories we have never shared because we have embraced comfort over discomfort. I find it fascinating that Jesus does not see the weeds as a threat to the harvest. Leave them alone. He asks us to stop judging, stop categorizing others, and stop fearing that which is different. Let's not jump to conclusions. Let's eat our dandelion salad. Let's not be afraid. Let's seek out those who are different from us. Let's embrace discomfort and seek treatment and exercise the spiritual muscle of humility, which invites us to remember that we have only just begun to understand why God has put us here. The church is indeed a hospital for sinners, not a museum of saints. But it's a hospital that can lead to healing, wholeness, and life itself, but only if we follow the doctor's orders and take the medicine of truth, commit to a diet that includes the stories of others, and exercise daily by opening our hearts to what God is calling us to become. Be assured, the gospel will comfort the afflicted, but not before it afflicts the comfortable. Amen.